This story is titled, Daughter Testified I Was Unfit as a Parent, Giving My Ex Full Custody. Now she's back. After she kicked her out, my ex-wife, 45 female and I 46 male, divorced 3 years ago and have 3 kids together, 24 male, 22 female, and 17 female. Since our 2 older kids were already moved out and in college when we divorced, the only custody and child support this year we had was our youngest daughter, Mary, who was 14 when we split. My ex wanted full custody while I was pushing for shared custody. I had moved into an apartment at this time, and Mary would stay with her mom during the week because it was easier for school. She would come stay with me on weekends, though I answered any questions Mary had about our divorce. But I made it a point to never say anything negative. I didn't want Mary to think that anything she had done was the cause for our divorce. I cherished the weekends we spent together, and from everything I saw, Mary enjoyed our time together too. Then the court hearing came, and when I walked into the courthouse that day, I honestly thought things were going to go fine. I wasn't expecting it to be easy, but I'd convinced myself that Mary wouldn't make things any harder than they already were. I mean, I'd done my best to stay a good dad, even with everything falling apart between Sarah and me. I showed up for every weekend, kept things civil, and never spoke badly about her mom. I thought that counted for something, but as soon as Mary got up to speak, I could feel the room shift. She stood there, clutching her little statement, looking way more confident than a 14-year-old should in that situation. And then she started reading. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. The tone in her voice was sharp, like she was trying to make me hurt. She said I was unfit to be a parent, that I didn't care about her, and that I'd only been trying to get custody to hurt her mom. She even said I was selfish and didn't prioritize her needs. I sat there, stunned, while my lawyer shot me a look that basically screamed, "What the hell is happening?" Hearing my own daughter say those things, it felt like a punch right in the gut. I couldn't understand where it was coming from. The way she talked, you'd think I was some deadbeat who never showed up or cared, but I was there. I was always there, even when it felt like Sarah was trying to edge me out of Mary's life. The words kept coming, though. She talked about how she felt unsafe around me, how she wanted nothing to do with my apartment, and how her mom's house was the only place she felt comfortable. She even threw in some weird, exaggerated stuff about my apartment being too small and depressing. I couldn't believe it. I'd worked hard to make that place feel like home for her, and here she was tearing it apart like it was a joke. The whole time, Sarah sat there with this smug little smile. She didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. Mary was doing all the damage for her. I wanted to speak up so badly. I wanted to interrupt and tell Mary she was wrong, to remind her of all the times we'd had fun together, all the weekends I'd spent trying to make her feel normal despite everything going on. But I couldn't. I just had to sit there and take it. By the time Mary finished, my hands were shaking. Not from anger, but from the sheer pain of it all. How could my own daughter, my baby girl, say those things about me? Did she even believe them? Or was this just Sarah's influence? I didn't know what hurt more, the possibility that she truly hated me, or the thought that Sarah had convinced her to. When the hearing ended, I tried to talk to her. I wasn't going to yell or argue, I just wanted to understand. I followed her out into the hallway, called her name, and said, "Mary, can we please talk for a minute?" She didn't even stop. She just glanced over her shoulder and said, "There's nothing to talk about," before walking off with Sarah. And Sarah, of course, turned around and gave me this cold, satisfied look before telling me to leave them alone. I can't even describe how empty I felt in that moment. It wasn't just that Mary didn't want to talk. It was the realization that she might never want to again. I drove home that night in silence, replaying the whole thing over and over in my head. Every word she said felt like a stab. Unfit, selfish, unsafe. None of it made sense, but there was no way to defend myself without making things worse. I spent the next few days wondering where I went wrong. Did I not do enough during the marriage? Was it my fault for moving out and leaving Sarah to handle the weekdays? Or was this just Sarah poisoning Mary against me? It didn't matter which option it was. They all sucked. From that day on, everything changed. I knew I'd lost something important, and I wasn't sure I'd ever get it back. But the worst part wasn't even the loss. It was the fact that Mary didn't seem to care at all. After the custody hearing, things were different. I don't even know how to explain it. It wasn't like Mary and I had some huge blowout argument or an official "we're done" moment, but after that day, she stopped answering my texts. She wouldn't pick up when I called, and when I tried to check in through Sarah, all I'd get was vague responses or, more often, silence. The weekends I used to look forward to so much, they were just gone. No explanation. No, I don't want to come over. Nothing. I'd sit in my apartment on Friday nights, waiting for her to show up, hoping maybe she'd changed her mind. But she never did. At first, I told myself she was probably just angry or upset and needed some time. But as the weeks turned into months, it was clear. She was done with me. I didn't want to push her, you know? I thought if I gave her space, she'd come around eventually. So I kept texting her, just little things. Hope you're doing well. Good luck on your test this week. Miss you, kiddo. Stuff like that. I didn't get a single response. Not even a thanks. Every now and then, I'd hear from Josh or Emma. They'd give me bits and pieces about Mary, how school was going, that she'd made the cheerleading team, stuff like that. It wasn't much, but at least it was something. They didn't seem to know much more than I did about why she'd cut me off, though. When I asked if Mary had said anything to them about me, they both said no. She just didn't talk about me at all. One day, Emma called me. She said Mary had mentioned something about feeling abandoned during the divorce. That caught me completely off guard. I mean, I fought tooth and nail for shared custody. How could she think I abandoned her when I was the one trying to keep us connected? I tried reaching out again after that. I sent her a longer text, saying how much I missed her, and that I was sorry if she ever felt like I wasn't there for her. I told her I'd always be there if she wanted to talk, no matter what. And you know what I got? Nothing. It was like I didn't exist. At some point, Sarah stopped even pretending to keep me in the loop. Anytime I tried to ask about Mary, her grades, how she was doing emotionally, anything, Sarah would just shut me down. She's fine, she'd say, like that was supposed to be enough. It got to the point where the only connection I had to Mary was the child support payments I sent every month and the college fund I kept contributing to. I didn't stop, though. Even if she hated me, I wasn't going to give up on my responsibility as her dad. It wasn't all bad, though. Around this time, I started dating Lisa. She was a single mom with 3 kids of her own. And honestly, she was the first real bright spot in my life since the divorce. Lisa understood what I was going through. Her ex had made things messy for her too. Her kids were great, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had some stability. But even with Lisa in my life, there was always this Mary-shaped hole I couldn't fill. Every time I saw her picture on social media or heard about her from Josh or Emma, it was like a reminder of how badly I'd failed. I kept thinking, what could I have done differently? How do I fix this? The thing is, I couldn't fix it. Not on my own anyway. Mary had made her choice. She didn't want me in her life, and I didn't know how to change that without making things worse. So, I drifted. I focused on Lisa, her kids, my job. I told myself that if Mary wanted to reconnect, I'd be ready. Until then, I just had to accept that this was my reality. A father without his daughter, waiting for a relationship that might never come back. It had been 3 years since the custody hearing, and at this point, I had accepted that my relationship with Mary was practically non-existent. I wasn't happy about it, but what could I do? She didn't want me in her life, and I wasn't going to force my way in. Life was finally starting to feel normal again. I was settled in with Lisa, and her kids were great. They weren't replacements for my own kids, but being around them made things feel a little less empty. Lisa and I had a good thing going, and I was happy for the first time in a long while. Then one night, completely out of nowhere, I got a call from Mary. I stared at my phone for a second, almost not believing it. I hadn't heard her voice in over a year. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail. I mean, what could she possibly want now? But of course I picked up. "Dad," she said, and immediately I could tell she'd been crying. Her voice cracked like she was trying to hold it together, but it wasn't working. "What's wrong?" I asked, already feeling that knot in my stomach. She started talking fast like she didn't know how much time she had to explain. "Mom kicked me out. I don't have anywhere to go. I didn't know who else to call." Then hearing her say that, after everything, tore me up inside. For so long, I'd been the last person she wanted to talk to. And now, when she had nowhere else to turn, I was the one she called. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or heartbroken. "Of course you can come here," I told her. "We'll figure it out, okay?" Lisa was sitting on the couch next to me, and she gave me this look. Half confused, half concerned. I mouthed, "It's Mary," and she nodded, not saying a word. When Mary showed up at the house, she looked different. Not just older, but tired, like she'd been carrying some heavy stuff for a while. She hugged me when she came in, which caught me off guard. I mean, this was the same girl who hadn't even wanted to text me back, and now she was hugging me like her life depended on it. I didn't push her for details right away. I figured she'd tell me when she was ready, and sure enough, later that night she opened up a little. "Mom and I got into a fight," she said, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of tea Lisa had made her. "She said she can't deal with me anymore. I tried to keep my face neutral, but inside I was furious. I couldn't believe Sarah would just throw her out like that. What happened? I asked gently. Mary hesitated, looking down at the table. I threw a party while she was out of town. Things got out of hand. Some stuff got broken. It wasn't the whole story, I could tell. But I didn't press. What about the other stuff she said? I asked carefully. Mary sighed, her shoulders slumping. She thinks I have a drug problem, but I don't. I've smoked weed a few times, but it's not like I'm doing anything serious. I wanted to believe her, but I wasn't sure. This was a side of Mary I didn't really know, and I wasn't sure how to navigate it. After she went to bed, Lisa and I stayed up talking. What are you going to do? Lisa asked. I don't know, I admitted. She can stay here for now, but long term? I'm not sure. Lisa looked worried. I want to help, but we have to think about the kids. They don't know her. And if what her mom's saying is true, she didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what she meant. It wasn't just about me and Mary anymore. I had a whole new family to consider, and I couldn't just make a decision without thinking of them. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, Mary was back in my life, and all I could think about was how completely unprepared I felt. I wanted to help her, but I had no idea what that was supposed to look like. All I knew was that the next few days were going to be some of the hardest I'd ever faced. The next morning, after Mary had slept in a bit, I decided to get more clarity on what had happened. It wasn't like I wanted to grill her or anything, but if I was going to figure out how to help her, I needed to know the full story. Hey, Mary, I said, as she sat down at the kitchen table for breakfast. Lisa had already taken her kids to school, so it was just the two of us. I don't want to push, but can you tell me more about what happened with your mom? She avoided my eyes, stirring her cereal for way too long before answering. I told you, Dad. I threw a party, some stuff got broken, and Mom freaked out. Okay, I said carefully, trying to keep my tone neutral. But your mom doesn't just kick you out over a party. There's gotta be more to it. Mary sighed loudly and pushed her bowl away. She's been on my case for months about stupid stuff. My grades, my friends, everything. The party was just the last straw, I guess. I could tell she wasn't giving me the full picture, but I didn't want to push too hard and make her shut down completely. Instead, I decided to call Sarah and get her side of the story. The call wasn't exactly pleasant. As soon as Sarah picked up, she launched into her usual condescending tone. Oh, so now you want to get involved? Where were you when she was spiraling, huh? Spiraling, I repeated. What are you talking about? Sarah went on to tell me that Mary had been caught skipping school, failing classes, and according to her, hanging out with a bad crowd. She claimed the party wasn't just some minor thing. It had been a full-blown disaster. The house was trashed, and several expensive items were either broken or stolen. And don't even get me started on the drugs, Sarah added. I found weed in her room weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure she's using more than that. Hearing all this made my stomach turn. Was Mary really that far gone? Or was Sarah exaggerating? I knew she wasn't exactly known for handling things calmly. When I got off the phone, I went back to Mary, who was scrolling through her phone on the couch. I talked to your mom, I said, sitting down across from her. Her eyes narrowed. Of course you did. Mary, she said you've been skipping school and failing your classes. Is that true? She shrugged, not meeting my gaze. School's been hard, okay? I've had a lot going on. And the weed? I asked. That got a reaction. She sat up straighter, her face defensive. It's not a big deal, Dad. It's just weed. Everyone smokes it. I leaned forward, trying to keep my voice calm. I'm not here to judge, Mary. I just need to understand what's going on so I can help you. She crossed her arms and glared at me. Help me? Like you've been helping me the past 3 years? Yeah, okay. That stung, but I let it slide. Look, your mom thinks you have a drug problem. Is there anything else I need to know? Mary rolled her eyes. She's exaggerating, like always. I threw a party, it got out of hand, and now she's acting like I'm some kind of criminal. I didn't know what to believe. On one hand, Sarah wasn't the most reliable narrator, but on the other, Mary's defensiveness didn't exactly scream innocence. That evening, Lisa and I had a long talk after the kids went to bed. She says it's just weed, I told her, but Sarah's convinced it's more. Lisa looked worried. And you believe her? I don't know, I admitted. Mary's not exactly giving me much to work with. Lisa sighed. Look, I feel for her, but we have to think about the kids. If what Sarah's saying is true, having her here might not be the best idea. I nodded, even though it made me feel sick to my stomach. The idea of turning Mary away after she'd finally come to me for help felt wrong. But Lisa had a point. Her kids didn't know Mary at all, and the last thing I wanted was to bring chaos into their lives. The truth was, I felt completely stuck. Mary needed help. Real help. But I didn't know if I could give it to her. And with Lisa's concerns hanging over me, I started to wonder if I was in way over my head. The next day, I knew it was time to make a call. Mary was still at the house, acting like nothing was wrong. She was on her phone most of the time, barely speaking to me or Lisa unless she needed something. The tension in the house was thick. Lisa was trying to keep things normal for her kids, but I could tell she was worried. After the kids went to bed, Lisa and I sat down in the kitchen. "We need to decide what we're doing here," Lisa said, her voice low but firm. "I want to help her. I really do. But she can't just stay here indefinitely." I nodded, staring at the table. I'd been running scenarios in my head all day, and none of them felt right. "I know," I said, "but I don't know where else she's supposed to go. She's my daughter, Lisa. How do I just tell her no?" Lisa sighed, rubbing her temples. "I get it, I really do. But you have to think about what this means for the rest of us. She's 17, and she's obviously going through something serious. I'm worried about what kind of influence she could have on the kids." She wasn't wrong. As much as it hurt to admit, Lisa's kids were my responsibility too now. They didn't ask for any of this, and I couldn't risk them being dragged into Mary's problems. "I'll talk to her," I said finally, "but it's not going to be easy." That night, I knocked on Mary's door. She was lying on the bed scrolling through her phone, barely looking up when I came in. "What?" she asked, her tone cold and dismissive. "Mary, we need to talk," I said, sitting down on the chair by the desk. She rolled her eyes and sat up, crossing her arms. "Let me guess. Mom called you again, and now you're going to lecture me?" "No," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This isn't about your mom. It's about what happens next." Her face immediately hardened. "What's that supposed to mean?" I took a deep breath, already feeling the weight of what I was about to say. "Mary, you can't stay here long term. This house isn't set up for that. And with everything going on, I just don't think it's the right environment for you." Her mouth dropped open, and for a second, she just stared at me. Then the anger hit. "Are you serious?" she snapped. "You said you'd help me. You're my dad, and you're just going to throw me out? Again?" "I'm not throwing you out," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "I want to help you, but I don't think this is the best place for you right now. We can look into other options, maybe counseling or a program that can give you the support you need." "Oh my God," she cut me off, standing up. "You really don't get it, do you? I don't need some stupid program. I just need a place to stay, and you can't even do that for me?" "Mary," I said, standing up too. "It's not that simple. There are other people in this house to consider." "Of course," she interrupted, throwing her hands in the air. "Your new perfect family? Guess I don't fit into that, huh?" Her words stung, but I couldn't let her guilt me into making a decision I wasn't sure was right. "That's not fair," I said quietly. "I've been trying to reach out to you for years, and you shut me out every time. Now you show up out of nowhere, and I'm supposed to just drop everything?" She shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "You don't get it. You never got it. I called you because I didn't have anyone else, and now I see why." With that, she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The next morning, she packed her things and left without saying a word. I tried to talk to her before she left, but she just brushed me off. As the door closed behind her, I felt a crushing sense of failure. I'd tried to do what was best. For her, for Lisa, for everyone. But it didn't feel like enough. Watching her leave was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but I didn't see any other way. Now, I'm left wondering if I made the right choice. Did I protect my family? Or did I just fail my daughter when she needed me the most? After Mary left, the house felt different. Quieter. Heavier. Even Lisa, who had been the most concerned about having her stay, seemed a little off. She tried to reassure me that I'd done the right thing, but it didn't feel that way. How could it? My daughter, who had come to me for help, had walked out the door, and I let her. The first few days after she left, I couldn't stop replaying the conversation in my head. I kept hearing her voice. "You don't get it. You never got it." Maybe she was right. Maybe I hadn't tried hard enough to understand what she was going through. I reached out to Sarah, hoping she might give me an update on where Mary had gone, but my calls went unanswered. No texts back, no voicemails. Josh and Emma were just as in the dark as I was. Josh said Mary wasn't responding to him either, and Emma told me, "She'll talk when she's ready, Dad. You just have to wait." Wait. That's all I'd been doing for years. Waiting for Mary to come around, waiting for her to open up, waiting for her to let me be her dad again. And now, when she'd finally turned to me, I'd sent her away. I couldn't shake the guilt. I threw myself into work and into spending time with Lisa and her kids, trying to distract myself. But no matter what I did, Mary was always on my mind. At night, when the house was quiet, I'd sit in the living room and wonder where she was, what she was doing, and if she was okay. I kept thinking about the last few years, how our relationship had fallen apart, and all the missed chances to fix it. Maybe if I'd pushed harder back then, this wouldn't have happened. Maybe if I'd fought more for shared custody, or refused to let Sarah have so much control, Mary wouldn't have drifted so far away. But maybe doesn't change anything. It's just noise. A couple of weeks later, I got a text from Josh. "Hey Dad, heard from Mary. She's back at Mom's. Doesn't want to talk about what happened." It was a relief to know where she was, but it didn't make me feel much better. She was back in the same situation that had driven her to call me in the first place. What if it just happened again? I tried texting her. Just something simple. "Hey Mary, I'm glad you're safe. Please let me know if you need anything. I'm always here." No response. Lisa did her best to comfort me, but even she struggled to find the right words. One night, after the kids were in bed, she said, "You can't beat yourself up forever, you know. You tried to help her, but you also had to think about what was best for everyone." "I know," I said, staring at the floor. "But she's still my kid. I should have done more." Lisa sat down next to me. "You can't pour from an empty cup. You've been doing everything you can, and at some point, Mary has to meet you halfway." It sounded reasonable, but it didn't feel that way. As a parent, you're supposed to show up, no matter what. But when she finally needed me most, I'd sent her back to the same place that had hurt her. Months went by, and things started to settle back into a routine. I kept texting Mary every now and then, even though I never got a reply. Josh and Emma visited more often, but whenever I asked about Mary, they'd change the subject, or shrug like they didn't know what to say. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what I could have done differently. Should I have fought harder to keep her at my house? Should I have ignored Lisa's concerns and focused solely on Mary? Or would that have caused even more damage in the long run? The truth is, I don't know. Maybe I'll never know. All I can do now is keep trying, keep reaching out, keep showing up, and hope that one day, Mary will let me back into her life. Until then, I'm stuck in this limbo, regretting the past, unsure about the future, and wishing I'd done better when I